Hi, it's Kirby Summers, and this is my podcast, The Jeffrey Epstein Project. Today, I'm going to be discussing Bill Gates and his connection and multiple connections to Jeffrey Epstein. And before I get started, I again want to thank you for being so supportive and for pretty much keeping me on this Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, Leslie Wexner case. You've helped me by making contributions, by buying my books, by becoming members of my Patreon, and by your incredible comments on Twitter that keep me poking around and pulling at strings. So I do want to thank you for that. It's very encouraging, and it's just really good to know that the hard work is appreciated by you guys. So there's one thing about Bill Gates that I haven't heard anybody but myself talk about, and I started to say this, I think, about a year ago, maybe more than a year ago. But Bill Gates' father, Bill Gates Sr., was an attorney for Black Cube. So if you remember, Black Cube is the company that was hired by Harvey Weinstein in order to silence Rose McGowan and Ronan Farrow. You know, do whatever, they infiltrated their lives with spies because Black Cube, the people that they hire, are former Mossad agents. The way that Harvey Weinstein became involved with Black Cube was through Ehud Barak. He called him, and Barak suggested, hey, hire Black Cube, and Weinstein did. And as we all know, Barak also had a very close relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, which I will cover in a different episode. Um, so that's just a little nugget that no one seems to discuss. Now, Bill Gates Sr. passed away in September of 2019. And a lot of the information that I was able to find a year and a half ago is gone. I doubt that you'll find anything that connects him to Black Cube at this point, other than perhaps my old tweets. And I'm surprised they're still there. In any event, on August 8th of 2019, Jeffrey Epstein updated his last will and testament, and he named Boris Nikolic, who's an advisor to Bill Gates, as a successor executor. And that means that he would have been the person to take control of Epstein's estate if the two named executors are unwilling or unable to do so. Nikolic turned around and told members of the press, oh, I'm very surprised, and no, I don't want any part to do with it, and I don't know why he named me, and of course, nobody knows anything in the Jeffrey Epstein case, and even though he was one of the men who was in that photograph, very, very well-known photograph taken in Jeffrey Epstein's house, with Epstein and Bill Gates and Larry Summers. Well, Nikolic is the person to the far right standing next to Bill Gates, just so that you can have a visual of him in your mind. All right, so there is a woman who's a common denominator, not just between Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Gates, but surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, also with Prince Andrew. In 1992, Jeffrey Epstein meets and befriends Melanie Walker 6 months after she graduated from the University of Texas. Now, it's unclear to me if she became a neurosurgeon at that time or after she met Jeffrey Epstein, but at some point, Melanie Walker becomes a neurosurgeon. However, he offers her at that time in 1992 the chance of a lifetime. He offers her a modeling job with Leslie Wexner's Victoria's Secret. She accepts, although it's unclear to me why such a bright woman would suddenly want to become a model. She moves into the apartment building at 301 East 66th Street, which is supposedly owned by Jeffrey Epstein's brother Mark. And it's the building, if you recall, where all of the Epstein victims were living. You know, Sarah Kensington lived there. Um, I believe that there were a few women, and if you just put in 301 East 66th Street and Epstein, I think you'll see the names of a few more of the women who were victims pop up. So Melanie becomes one of Ghislaine Maxwell's girls, and as such, she's instructed by Maxwell to cut her long hair and wear her hair short in a style that mimics Ghislaine Maxwell's. Um, Ghislaine had several of her victims cut their hair. I think that maybe she had a Rachel complex from the Friends show. Um, and, you know, all these women just cut their hair. In one of the photographs that can be found online of Melanie, while she's giving an interview, on the wall, there's a photograph of her in the Ghislaine cropped hair cut. It's just such a horrible hairstyle. I don't know who thought that anybody would look good in that short hair. But anyway, there is a photograph of that, although no one's made any connection. And it just surprises me because a few of Jeffrey Epstein's victims have publicly said that they were told to cut their hair by Ghislaine Maxwell. Okay, so in 1997, she pretty much becomes the intermediary between Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Gates, and she becomes an advisor to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. When she begins working at the Gates Foundation, she becomes friendly with Boris Nikolic. Now, if you remember, when I started the program today, I said that it was Nikolic who Epstein selected to be one of his executors of his last will and testament. So she is friendly with Boris Nikolic. And both of these people, her and Nikolic, are sort of the intermediaries between Bill Gates and Jeffrey Epstein. Now that's a close relationship. By 1998, so about a year later, maybe less than a year, Epstein starts to refer to her as his science advisor. Now, during the time that Melanie was Epstein's science advisor, he appears to have introduced her to Prince Andrew because she also develops a very close relationship with Prince Andrew. Now, it's fascinating because Melanie has a close friendship with the people surrounding Bill Gates, one of the wealthiest and most powerful men on the planet. And then she has a close relationship with Prince Andrew. What are the odds? I mean, that's like mind-boggling to anyone, and no one's talking about this. In 2000, Prince Andrew invites Melanie Walker to the Dance of Decades party at Windsor Castle. In 2001, Prince Andrew visits Jeffrey Epstein's Zorro Ranch in New Mexico. And according to one of Epstein's housekeepers, she said, a young and pretty neurosurgeon was there to entertain Andrew. The housekeeper said, at one point we had all these different teas, and you could pick the tea that you wanted, and she asked me to find one that would make Andrew horny. How many neurosurgeons are in Jeffrey Epstein's life? I would just think it would be not a wild leap of faith to think that maybe the person that was at Jeffrey Epstein's Zorro Ranch entertaining Prince Andrew, who needed the horny tea for Andrew, would have probably been Melanie. Okay, that's my take on it. And so I'm saying allegedly it was Melanie, but I think pretty much this young and pretty neurosurgeon to entertain Andrew with the horny tea is Melanie. So in 2006, while she's at the Gates Foundation, Melanie meets Steven Stanofsky. He's a senior executive at Microsoft who later became president of the Windows division. She moves to Seattle to be with him, and they get married. After Epstein is labeled a sex offender, Bill Gates continues to have a relationship. Now, according to James Stewart, who's an attorney, a journalist, an author, and he's actually the author of one of my favorite books, Den of Thieves. And it sort of exposes and explains the Michael Milken Wall Street fiasco. So I would encourage you, if you've not read Den of Thieves by James Stewart, to pick it up. It's just a great read. But according to James Stewart, Epstein and Gates met at least 6 times, and he believes it was more. And that includes visits to the mansion, seeing each other in Seattle, flying in Epstein's plane, even though Gates has his own $40 million plane. Now, Epstein and Gates were in talks about setting up a charity fund that would benefit Epstein. The question is why? I mean, why would there be a charity fund that would benefit Epstein? Now, I think the answer to that is almost pretty clear if you connect the dots. And at this point, I'm just going to say that unless you guys start looking, and by you guys, I mean everybody, start looking at the sub stories to a lot of the people in the world of Gates. So, like, I don't know how many of you even knew that his father was connected to Black Cube, or how many of you had even heard about Melanie until today, or maybe you've seen it in one of my tweets. But in order to really connect the dots of the Jeffrey Epstein case, we have to work with the layers and the interrelationships of these people. I think it's fascinating that the same woman, Melanie, would be a very good friend of Prince Andrew. If you plug in her name and you plug in Prince Andrew's name, you'll see that he had a lot of, like, he would call her like my nerdy friend or something very peculiar. And so they had this close relationship. And, there's this thing going on where Gates, after Epstein got arrested, he came out and said, through a spokesperson, that he regrets ever meeting Epstein. Well, we've heard so many men say that. We've heard Leslie Wexner say that. We've heard almost everyone say that after the fact. So I thought that I would bring this to you sort of as an introduction to my research on Bill Gates and Jeffrey Epstein. There will be others, and I'm curious to hear what your questions might be. So feel free to add them to I'm sure I'll put this on Twitter. So feel free to add them there. And hey, I look forward to doing some more of these. I'm enjoying my new Spreaker experience. And if you're having trouble listening or following on this platform, let me know. But so far, it seems like easy for me to use. All right. Well, thanks for listening to the Jeffrey Epstein Project, and I will do this again. Bye.